once again, there's this mismatch between the two different sides, in that the people who want to route around a filter, if they are economically incentivized to do so, they can build other tools. They can use aspects of the Bitcoin network like Libra Relay, which are very open and permissive in what transactions they accept and relay, or they can go directly to miners. And that's really one of the big things that's changed over the past few years, is more miners having direct centralized APIs for you to push transactions to and to completely bypass any of the policy rules of the network. So we're at this phase now where it's the technical debate on one side, and it's like a moral philosophical debate on the other side. And so like the two sides aren't really even speaking the same language to each other. And I don't know how long it's going to keep going on, because it's not clear that there is a point at which the like knots/filters side will finally admit that none of their strategies are working and going to work.
Why do you think is this whole thing coming up now? As you said, it's been around for a longer time, but now it seems like it's a more popular topic on podcasts. It's more on Twitter. Like I've made a tweet about it. I told you before. I'm of the opinion that we just need more nodes. Like I just think we need more people to run full nodes. So getting to, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, maybe even like over 1 million Bitcoin full nodes is for me more important than what implementation they're running. We need more people to actually defend the network. But I was just writing like what is the whole thing with Bitcoin knots and co? And I asked Grok, and then I had just like this thought of like me just interacting with Grok, and it had like over 200,000 impressions, which for me, having, I don't know, not even like around 20,000 followers, which is huge. And I was like, oh, why are people interested in that? Before I write with Grok in private, I'm just writing it with it publicly. And I almost got attacked just asking questions. Like I'm not even on any side yet, because I'm just not deeply on there. What I also discovered was like, it's mostly the same thing. Like their implementations are not that different from each other. Like it's yeah. What I heard, like mostly the same implementation.
Yes. So there are many different Bitcoin implementations, but Knots is based off of Core. So it's like 99.9% the same code. Why is this narrative and discussion dominating conversation? I would say it's primarily because it's a lot easier for the average person to get hooked by. So, those of us who are deep in the technical space, we would much rather be talking about things like covenants, CTV, scaling, actual improvements to the Bitcoin protocol that would give developers more tools to build more powerful second layer solutions that can offer things like better scalability, better privacy, so on and so forth. But I think that this is dominating the conversation because it's a lot lighter on the technical aspects. And when you try to make it about the technical aspects, the people tend to completely dismiss any of those facts. So it's a much easier conversation, I think, to go viral and get engagement. And that's why podcasters are talking about it. That's why the head of marketing at Ocean is leaning so heavily into it, is because it works to get engagement. And we'll see how much stamina this thing has. It does feel like they're kind of drawing a line in the sand with the Bitcoin Core version 30 release, which will probably happen in the next month or so. And who knows what will happen after that. Maybe some of them will rage quit or pivot or move on, but I suspect that it'll just be a continual pushing of the goalposts.
Is there some sort of danger to some splitting of the of the Bitcoin network? Anything similar to what we saw in 2017?
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that is very annoying about this, is that they're actually not intending to propose consensus changes. And this is what we've been saying for months, is that, look, if you want to actually enforce what you believe should be the rules to not allow arbitrary data, then you have to actually do it at the consensus level. You have to prevent the data from getting into a block. You have to reject blocks that have that data if you actually want this to affect any sort of real change. And going down the policy route is just simply not effective. And they don't seem to be willing to do that. And it's, I think, logical not to, because I don't think it would end well if that sect, that subgroup of people tried to fork off. I think that they simply do not have the like the economic relevance and power, the technical capability to get all of the infrastructure and ecosystem together. You can look at parallels, for example, to like Bitcoin XT or SegWit 2x many years ago. There were similar types of things where it was like a small set of people that came together and were proposing consensus changes, and ultimately it just fizzled out because there wasn't enough momentum behind it. I don't think that there's anywhere near the like Bitcoin Cash level of momentum around a contentious change to the consensus rules.
Is then not mostly, and I will probably, just with asking that question, piss off a lot of people, but is it an emotional distraction, or is it somewhat also helpful to maybe get more people to pay attention to full nodes?
It can be both. I definitely think it's heavily emotionally charged, and that's why it's very frustrating to have calm, rational arguments with people when they're screaming about things like child porn. It's like it's really jumped the shark with regard to that stuff.
I wanted to just add to that. I think those are a lot of bots, because I've got those comments in the past 5 days on my YouTube replies, and I haven't talked about Knots and Crow at all in those podcasts. Like, I know it hasn't even been a topic in those conversations, and people are posting that, and I wouldn't post anything on the podcast that hasn't even been discussed in the podcast. So my assumption is that there are some bots, but like there's always some bots. Maybe it's also really people that are really passionate and just want to put it in everywhere.
It's some of both, but there's definitely a lot of bot activity. I actually just posted a tweet like right before we started recording where I posted a screenshot of several bots that have showed up in our replies, and I have a Turing test actually that I reply to anyone that I suspect of being a bot, and those screenshots are showing definitive proof that these are like stupid LLM bots that aren't actually capable of engaging in rational conversation. They're clearly designed to disrupt discourse and to change people's perception of, I think, the actual interest level and support for that particular narrative.
Super interesting. I've heard something, and it stuck with me, and I think it's a really interesting point, maybe also a really good point, that we already have a filter in Bitcoin built in, and it's called the fee, like the network fee that you have to pay. What do you think about that?
Yes, and that has been the crux of the decade-long argument, is what is spam? And so you have two primary camps when it comes to defining spam. One camp says, well, it's kind of like, have you ever heard of there was like a judge 100 years ago in America who was he had to make this decision about what material is considered obscene and pornographic. And he was tasked with defining pornography, and his definition was, I know it when I see it. And it's the same sort of thing with spam, where they're essentially like, look, I know it when I see it. Like when you see a JPEG or some random token JSON being put into Bitcoin, that's spam, because Bitcoin does not interpret that as anything. It is not relevant to Bitcoin. It's just people who are taking advantage of attributes of the Bitcoin protocol, network, infrastructure, what have you, and building on top of it. Now, the other camp is, well, we can't really precisely and quantitatively define spam. Like, we can't encode a single set of rules that will stop all of this because it is a very subjective thing. And Bitcoin is an objective rule-based system. So that's one of the big disconnects. So the other side is basically like the only objective thing that we really have is the economics. If you pay a competitive fee rate to get included into the block by a miner, then you have proven that you're doing something that is of sufficient economic value for you to pay. Now, one of the problems that we have right now is that nobody is using Bitcoin. So there is we're basically at fee floor levels. In fact, we have dropped below what was historically the 1 Satoshi per virtual byte floor of fees. And now people are paying a tenth of that. And that's like another aspect of this filter argument where I think it shows that the filters don't really work, because the vast majority of nodes were actually blocking transactions that paid less than 1 Satoshi per virtual byte. And yet people were able to route around that. So this is what I've been saying for a while, is like the way that we fix quote unquote spam on Bitcoin is we have to get more people actually operating in a permissionless manner and using the blockchain themselves, and essentially creating more demand and more competition over block space to price out the really low value, stupid use cases. And I'm somewhat hopeful that that will happen. I actually posted something just yesterday that's showing that there's this one layer 2 project, which full disclosure, I am invested in, called Citrea, and they are filling up a lot of the blocks on testnet right now with their zero knowledge rollup. And if that system is able to create a high level of demand when they launch on mainnet, then that will create a lot of demand for block space, and hopefully kick off the fee market again, get more competition, and price out more of the really stupid stuff.
I'm doing my part. All the income that I can support in Bitcoin, I do in Bitcoin. So like all my partners, they are now fully paid in Bitcoin. And I'm switching more and more of the payments in Bitcoin towards also paying in Bitcoin, which I haven't done in the past, but I'm starting to do it now. So I think around 70 or 80% of the income is now fully in Bitcoin, excluding the thing of microseed. And then about like 10 to 30%, I think, is spent in Bitcoin. So it's really interesting because I love this. I love the low fees. It allows me to send transactions multiple times a week and receive transactions multiple times a week for like 70 cents, 50 cents. Like it's nothing. Like I pay a freelancer in El Salvador and it costs me 70 cents. If I do the same thing in the fiat world, I pay probably like 20 euros, maybe 30 euros. They also have to pay something on their side. So I personally am right now, even though I think it's not good for Bitcoin long term, I think also the fees will naturally rise long term. But right now I'm enjoying the roll around in the on-chain for no fees at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is also a side effect of Suitcoin Summer, because the institutions are not doing stuff on chain. They're all using trusted third-party custodians. And so any settlement that they're doing is happening off chain. They're not creating demand for block space. And because we haven't seen the resurgence of retail interest, retail is not really using the chain very much either. So I don't know. We need more use cases, maybe better narratives to get more people into self-custody. This is the battle that I've been fighting for 10 years is really, I'm fighting against human nature. Human nature tends to be prioritize convenience at the expense of almost everything else. And if that happens with Bitcoin, it's actually bad for Bitcoin as a system. If everybody decides to trust third parties, keeps their Bitcoin on an exchange or an ETF or what have you, that actually introduces systemic risk and a lot of weakness and potential for capture to Bitcoin as a system.
Yeah, it's the same thing that Daniel and I always talk about that, where we talk about a Bitcoin versus bank coin, and there's this small fear of mine that if we don't have enough people caring about the freedom aspect, so I always describe there's like the wealth aspect, there's the freedom aspect, and then there's the community aspect of Bitcoin. And the freedom aspect, if you don't have enough people that run their own full node, do self custody, and do the important work to care about freedom, we might end up in a future where we have Bitcoin, but it's actually a bank coin. And yes, we have number graph technology. We're all rich, but we have none of the advantages of the freedom aspect of Bitcoin. And we just ended up having a second gold standard, and we don't really have anything else. Like there is some concern of mine that because the convenience is so big. So I don't know. This is something where I'm like, it might. This is. I'm just concerned about that people are too convenient and just go in those third parties and relax there and don't take self custody and run their own full node, which is harder if you're used to the fiat system, because a bank account is very much like exchange account. It's the same process, but taking self custody is definitely different. So I support all self custody solutions and providers and services because they are pushing for freedom, they're pushing for the right cause, like Casa.
Yeah, that's why when people ask me like who are your biggest competitors, I don't list other Bitcoin wallets. I list the exchanges, the ETFs, the banks. That's what we're all really fighting against.
Absolutely. And we need as many competitors as possible because we then have more people that fight on the same side. It's like it's brothers in arms, it's soldiers that we are fighting on the right side, and not like those customers went to Unchain. Oh, this customer went to Castle. Like, yeah, who cares? Like they are both in self custody, all on the same team. One thing that I was also thinking when you were talking about filtering is like how is filtering not censorship? Like if we have this thing of like who defines what spam is like a very hard debate for me, because it's it sounds a little bit like the debate we have in social media where,
Hmm.
oh yeah, like we have to censor out things to protect people, what they see and all that. And I'm like, yeah, like that's not filtering, that's censorship that you're doing, and then you can grow this whole thing. So is there some concern of yours that if we are continuing this filtering censoring route, again I will just make it clear, like I'm not on any side, but if we are on more and more filtering, that we might end up like actually having some sort of mechanism where we maybe in a world where there's some transaction that doesn't let through. Is this any concern of yours, or is the knots thing something different?
I mean, philosophically, you could make that argument. Bitcoin is a system of rules, right? These rules do filter and censor many different things. Like we censor anyone who tries to double spend their money. We censor anyone who tries to print more money than we have agreed to be allowed to happen with each new block. Um, I'm not worried about it because, as I've said, filters, at least at a policy and relay level, are completely ineffective. But yeah, from the philosophical perspective, it is somewhat worrying because, and like I said, I'm a technical guy. I mostly look at this system from a developer's perspective of what can be done with it, what can be built upon it, and that if you really wanted to take the filtering debate to its logical conclusion, you would have to strip out a lot of functionality of what Bitcoin can even do if you want to make it more pure. And stripping out more functionality will greatly degrade the ability for Bitcoin as an ecosystem to grow and innovate, and for people to build other systems that are anchored into Bitcoin. And so I have this article that I wrote a decade ago, which I have been reposting a lot lately, which is that yes, Bitcoin is money. It's also many other things, and Bitcoin is what I have called a trust anchor. just due to the nature of the properties and the guarantees of the blockchain. If you can anchor pieces of data into it, that functionality is very powerful and allows you to build other systems on top of it. One example that's been going on for probably almost a decade is like open timestamps. This proof of existence. You can shove the proof of creation of an arbitrary number of documents and other things into Bitcoin by using sort of the magic of Merkle trees and hashes combined with the immutability of the Bitcoin blockchain. And that's actually a highly efficient thing that you can do. I think it only uses 2 or 3 transactions per day for that entire system. But then, other things like Lightning Network or Arc or BitVM based systems, all of these things need some of the more advanced functionality and programmability of the protocol that I suspect some people would want to strip out, because it also allows you to do non-monetary stuff with it.
It will. I have a feeling this debate will be there for a longer time. Not I don't know how long, but like it feels like it's not over yet. Like it still has a lot of like momentum. But yeah, maybe we've seen the peak of it. But it's been interesting how it rose out of nothing seemingly, and it's now like very present everywhere, and it's like almost hard to not talk about it. One thing that I also want to make sure to talk about is because I think you've talked about on it on other podcasts. I think I heard you talk about that, is physical attacks on Bitcoin. It's just like what else when you have self custody and you make it really good, like what else are you really looking into with physical attacks and other vectors of making sure you as a Bitcoiner are not attacked? And is this something where you're like, especially someone that is known with a face in Bitcoin and with a name that you worry about?
Yes. And I also get some pushback on this of people saying that I'm fudding self custody by talking about wrench attacks. But I try to put these things in perspective. And I had a talk at Bitcoin 2025 in Vegas about this topic. And I started off with the disclaimer that this is an edge case scenario. I think we're up to around 250 known attacks over the entire course of Bitcoin history, though there have probably been 3 to 4 times as many that we don't know about. But that's still an edge case, and that in terms of risk, there's a lot of things that you should be worried about before you worry about wrench attacks, like leaving your money with a trusted third party, or just having your money on a hot wallet where it could be hacked. Any number of things with a custody setup where you have single points of failure are problematic. And ultimately, if you are susceptible to wrench attacks, then you have a single point of failure in your setup. You're probably only using a single signature wallet, and someone could easily coerce you, under duress to basically authenticate and bypass all of your security mechanisms and, voluntarily send your money to them. But this is the type of thing that I focus on because this is one of the risks that our clientele is at higher risk of. Casa, we really target high net worth OGs, whales, people who have a substantial amount of their net worth in Bitcoin. And in many cases, these people are well known. They are public figures. They're on social media. They're going to conferences. People know who they are. And in many cases, it's not difficult to find where people live. Not many people have very strong privacy. Some people live in countries where they are forced to disclose where they live legally. And so that's why I focus on that, because we have actually had clients who have been wrench attacked. This is not just a theoretical thing for Casa. And if you are at that level, then I think that you should be aware of the risks and be aware of how to mitigate them.
Yeah, but I like your disclaimer because I think most people will lose their Bitcoin to their own fault of a way simpler attack or of something way simpler where they got social engineer and there's like there's an email popping up and they just put their seed phrase in there and like it's gone. I think those is way more likely than someone actually coming to your home and actually attacking you somehow. Like it's an edge case, but it's an important one, and it's also interesting. I think if you're thinking to that extreme, you probably have a good setup. if you make everything good for that, like even if it never happens, I think you probably then have a robust setup that you can be proud of.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I want people thinking about it, is because, something that we see very commonly when we're onboarding new clients, for example, people who have been in the space for a really long time, they probably set up a wallet many, many years ago and just left it alone. And there's a sort of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. There's also a big fear of ever interacting with your Bitcoin. I call this phenomenon Schrodinger's Bitcoin. It's as long as you don't try to spend your Bitcoin, you have not proven that you've lost access to it. Every time you try to spend your Bitcoin, you're risking learning that you screwed something up and you lost your Bitcoin.
That because this was very much my experience when after I think 3 years of hodling and never touched it, finally decided to like upgrade, and I've upgraded multiple times and many different solutions. My Bitcoin, which was really like, what if I learn now? Like I laughed because it was literally me after I think the first 3 years where I just did not touch it at all. I just like had an address and just always put it there, never spend it. And upgrading it and reviewing it, whatever, like quarterly, yearly, whatever you're doing, thinking about situations like, hey, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? Am I secured against this? Am I secured against this? I think it's a very security hygiene that everyone should kind of consider and do. So I like this message a lot. Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.